You're listening to Tehachapod with Key Budge, Corey Costello, and Greg Garrett.
Tehachapod time again. Key Budge, Greg Garrett, Corey Costello. Guys, how are you?
Doing good, Key. I'm super excited about talking to Bob Souza today.
You see, you had
Mr.
to spill
Wine.
it.
I wanted to be the first. I want to be the host.
Well, I'll tell you what. We have Bob Souza here as a guest today. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And this was Greg. You know, we were talking about our wine industry, and Greg goes, "We have to have the original,
the Godfather of
Tehachapi Wines, Bob Souza, here in the house." So
I've been called that.
So, well, thank you so much for making the time to join us. And what we want to, gosh, there's so many questions, but we want to tell a story of the history of our wine industry that we now have. We can now say wine industry here in Tehachapi.
And a history too. I mean, every story has a beginning, and this is really what Bob brings to the table, is really the beginning of what we now have as a wine industry.
Yeah, Bob and Bob and Patty Souza started what we have today. We have 5 wineries, 3 microbreweries. I'm going to throw those in.
Six
wineries. Thank you. And it continues to grow, and it's award winning. So welcome, Bob. And why don't we just start from the beginning?
Thank you. Well, my wife and I are LA escapees, and we left the valley in 1990. Somebody said to me, "Take a drive on Sunday. It's only 45 minutes past Lancaster," I think is what it was presented to us. And it's the best kept secret in California, and it was. Now, mind you, I was an L.A. guy. So from L.A., I'm putting up the hill. I pull into the gas station in town, which was then a Union station.
Yeah.
And now it's the one right on the corner facing the tower, the water tower.
Uh-huh.
Oh, the Gas and Go.
Yeah.
That one. It was a 76. And I remember getting out of my car. Now, I'm born and raised in Boston. My parents moved to California when I was in junior high. And I've lived and made my bones in L.A. in that period of time. And so I'm L.A. kind of guy. And in fact, if they ever do a movie about me, I think Joe Pesci's going to play me. That's how that's going to be.
I love it.
That'd be a good fit, actually.
I was hoping for Matt Damon, because he's from Boston.
Corey's always looking for that Tom Cruise.
I love Joe Pesci.
So I get out of the car to go get gas at that gas station, and there's nobody there, but there is an individual gentleman sitting inside the little store part, which at that time wasn't even a store. It was just a little thing where
a service tech.
So I walk in to the guy, and I said, "I need to get some gas." He goes, "Yeah, go out there and pump it." So I go outside. It's rolled back to 0, and the key's hot, so you don't have to engage anything. And he sat there and watched me pump the gas, and I looked down, and there's a sign right below the meter, and it said, "Pump first, then pay. This is Tehachapi, not L.A." That was the sign on the pump.
And there wasn't much in 1990 downtown Tehachapi, by the way. I mean, that was
one stoplight.
Exactly.
One stoplight.
And it was flashing at that intersection.
It was a flashing stoplight.
Yep.
Yeah, an old burnout Moose Lodge.
Yeah.
But that reminds me of the sign on Highline that says, "Welcome home, slow down," when you're coming in from the AV. So it's so true.
And I told my wife, I turned to my wife and I said, "We got to live here." And I was at that time probably 10 or 11 years from retirement. I started in the business very young, so I got to retire when I was 61 with 40 years in, so it made for nice. And we looked around and we saw the Stowell house that we actually wound up buying on 60 acres. That's how we actually landed here.
Wow. And you were still working in the LA area at the time, right?
Yes, and I was cavorting around wanting desperately to learn how to be a pilot. So it was my bucket list. I had one item. I wanted to be a pilot, okay? So I calculated, this would really work out great today. I calculated what it would cost to drive from the ranch to my office by car. And then I calculated what it would be by plane. And I started taking flying lessons. And at the end of that time, I told my wife, I said, "Honey, here's the deal. Planes don't do miles per gallon. They do gallons per hour. So if your flight takes half an hour, you're going to burn that portion of 8.5 gallons an hour rated." Well, it turns out, and at that time, of course, avgas was like $3 or $4 a gallon. It was 104 miles one way and 104 miles back. That's 4.5 hours total driving every day, and burning up a lot of gas. My airplane, which is a 160 horsepower engine, burns, 8.5 gallons per hour. I could fly to Van Nuys in 4 hours. Excuse me, in half an hour.
Yeah.
Burning 4 gallons. Close the deal.
There you go.
She said, "Buy the damn plane." And we did.
So you're living and working in LA, or working in LA. You're commuting via aircraft. You're running a ranch, 60 acres.
Yeah.
But then you figured out, what am I going to do with this 60 acres? I need to plant something. How'd that conversation go?
Well, it was funny because my wife was pressing me. Now, I'd already got my bucket list squared away, so I didn't have much maneuvering room with the MEMSOB. She said to me, "We need to do something." And I was just having the time of my life being a cowboy. And I grew up in Boston.
Yeah.
I got a horse that would stand up like this on command. I bought a retired police horse, by the way. And she didn't. So I said, "Well, honey, what do you want to do?" She goes, "We should plant something." And I thought she meant like roses or
Corn. Yeah.
Some sunflowers,
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, when would you like to plant?" She goes, "Here's the deal, guys. This is it in a nutshell." She said, "We should plant grapes and make wine. Nobody's ever done that before."
So this
Okay.
was all Patty's.
Oh, totally.
Oh, okay. The truth
Oh,
comes
you
out.
guys are married. You understand how that works. So I never say no to my darling.
Never.
Ever. And I said, "Okay." Now, the never been done before part didn't hit right away. And there was a sober moment that came in there a week or two later. But we made a deal. And we literally shake hands on every agreement. And that was a shake-hander.
And so then you encouraged volunteers in the community to come out and help you with this project somewhat at some point in time.
Yes, that's the part I really would like to emphasize is to Tehachapi. The first year we moved here was July 27th of 1990. And the first thing I got was the local paper, and it had a picture on the front of a brick pilaster that you put a mailbox on, the little barn-shaped mailbox. And the mailbox was gone, and it was obvious damage to the brick pilaster. And it was at the Village Grill. That's where I got the paper. At the Village, we were having breakfast there. And there was a color picture, probably 2x5 or bigger, and on the front page. And it said, "Unknown truck driver backed into Mrs. Murphy's mailbox." And I turned to her between my bacon and eggs, and I said, "Honey, if this is a crime wave, we gotta live here."
That happened too. I mean, they used to run the crime report in the newspaper. Used to literally say "stolen garden hose." Somebody knocked on the door and ran away.
Actually, it was misplaced.
Someone knocked on the door and ran away on C Street, like that kind of stuff. Totally, yeah. You're bringing back
In fact,
memories.
At that point in time, I think in 1990 there had been one recorded homicide. I may be wrong about this. I'm better to be close. In Tehachapi, like in 30 or 40 years.
Yeah,
It's probably true.
Those things have changed, but I can remember coming into town with my ranch truck, and I had Souza Ranch painted on the door. I couldn't wait to get that. The old beater, stick shift on the floor, real ranch truck. She pointed out the fact, too, that, by the way, she can't drive stick shift. And I bought the stick shift. It was an old truck.
So, when you guys decided to plant something, there obviously, no one had done wine grapes before.
Ever.
So was there? Did you enlist the help with some experts to kind of study the issue for you? This is my favorite part of the
And see,
story.
this was
out.
pre-internet. I mean, how do you even research that?
Yes.
And hopefully you
So-
didn't call the guys at University of Davis.
UC Davis, right?
UC
Last
Davis,
guys you'd call,
right?
correct?
People that said grapes won't grow in Tehachapi, right?
Well, it wasn't the guy at Davis, actually, but Davis played a big part in it. The guy that was the head of the vitirology department at UC Davis called me. Somebody gave him my number and said, "I understand you're looking for help. We got just what you need. Can you get your butt up here?" Mm-hmm. Well, guess what UC Davis has? They have an airport on campus.
Nice.
But a private field bigger than the one here. So I flew up there with a good buddy of mine and met with them. But that was long after we had made the decision to move forward. And when she said, well, what should we do? I said, what should we plant? She goes, let's plant grapes. No one's ever done that before. And then about a month after that happened, we decided just to do it. And I mean just to do it. No research, no anything. Now I got to figure out how you do that.
So failure was not an option. You were just going to do it.
It was virtually, there was nothing you could have thrown in front of that incentive that would have changed our minds.
American ingenuity.
Now we have 6 kids between us. 4 of them own their own business, highly successful. And when I put this on the table and showed them what Mom and I are going to do, they wanted to have us committed.
Well, you're going to spend our inheritance. What are you doing?
Oh no, they can buy and sell me. They're very, so my youngest son Steve, that's the one that went to Glendale, the Dalvages. Mm-hmm. My youngest son Steve said, Dad, let me see if I understand this straight. You're going to plow that acreage next to the barn. You're going to put a fence in. You're going to furrow and you're going to plant. I go, yeah. He goes, and it takes how long for plants to bear fruit that's pressable? 3 to 5 years. And yes, it takes 3 to 5 years. Who are you going to have do that? I haven't picked him out yet. He's down there somewhere.
Yeah.
And then, if you're in the ground 4 to 5 years, you harvest, God willing, and then you press after a period of only a number of weeks, and then you sit in barrels for a year, and then you put it in the bottle and throw a label on it and try to sell it to a distributor, not knowing at all what it's like or what it's going to be like, and that's your plan.
And it's going to be either wine or vinegar. We just don't know yet, but it's going to be something.
We had an episode like that, and I'll share that with you too. So I said, yeah, that's the plan. That was the extent of the plan. And I said, I got to go back to tractor. And I have a tractor, but I didn't have a discer. I borrowed it from my neighbor across the road, the actor, Jack Palance.
Yeah.
Okay, we were good friends, became good friends. And he had a discer, but he didn't have a tractor. Damn, I got some bargaining room. So he did help. And yes, it was, if I were to go back, I would tell you, gentlemen, that I'd do it all over again. But I can't think of a dumber way to do it. The success we've had has been borderline miraculous. Now, here's the thing I'm going to leave you guys with today when we're all done. I'm going to charge you 3 with a favor. Find out for me why nobody ever did it before.
Yeah,
I'm dead serious.
Well, what did the ag experts tell you when you said we're going to do this?
When you mentioned about the UC Davis, it was actually the State Department of Agriculture. We planted, now press the button 2 years forward. So we're 2 years in the ground trying to figure out what's going to happen in the next 2 years and how we get a viable product that we can sell that we don't know how to make and we don't know how to price. So at that point, I get the call from the State Department of Agriculture. We'd like you to come to our meeting. There's a gentleman here who used to live in Tehachapi, wants to share some thoughts with you. We go to that meeting. Gospel here. We go to that meeting, 45 minutes, we sit there. They went around, there's 11 of them, elderly folks, all department. And the one guy from Tehachapi stood up and said, well, Ms. Souza, I need to tell you something. It absolutely, positively cannot be done. It cannot be done. And I said, why? Well, he said, it's been tried, which we can't verify, by the way.
Yeah.
And I myself, is this statement, have tried, it doesn't work. And I looked over and I saw a tear coming down my wife's eye. Mm. If that man had been 20 years younger, I'd have cuffed him. But he was older than me, so I couldn't do that. So I said, well, I want to thank all of you for your time. We're 2 years planted in the ground and we ain't turning back. Merry Christmas. Yeah. And we left. Now, I'll tell you a little side story on that one. 3 years later, 3 years after that date, 5 years from day one, we entered, we had a harvest, and like a fool, we entered it into an international competition. International competition. You can't be any dumber than that. And by God, it won a silver medal. Mm. That's when it started.
And I think I have one of the wine bottles signed by you from that year. I'm not going to tell you, the listeners, where I keep it because they'll try to take it or someone will try to come and drink it. But I keep that under lock and key.
So that whole litany there, I think I went a little too long on that, built up to our first harvest. Now, I did one thing right. I engaged Sunridge Nursery in Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. They grow growing stock for growers. Mm-hmm. They have 450 acres growing in the nursery. It's phenomenal. They're wonderful people. They helped us a lot. So they actually made the plant that I wanted, which is a Zinfandel called Primitivo. It's from Italy. And the funny thing is, we had an archway painted over the door of our tasting room, if you've ever been there. It says Tuscany and Tehachapi. Mm-hmm. My wife's half Italian, I'm half Italian. And so we had a lot of Tuscany in our backgrounds and our ancestors. I thought that would be a great way to go. And that was very successful with Tehachapi's adopted that with a lot of things that they've done.
Bob, let me ask you about with this type of wine. Was it by chance it just happened to be your favorite type of wine, or did you do a little bit of research before you put that type of grape in the ground? Because it was, if it couldn't be done.
Thinking I did research on anything. A lot of sampling. Okay, did a lot of sampling with other guys' wines.
Okay.
No, I took the globe, okay, and I put my finger on Tehachapi, which on the globe is where Point Conception sort of sticks out. If you draw your finger in the state on a big enough depiction, that's Tehachapi. Mm-hmm. So I put my finger on Tehachapi and didn't move it, and I rolled the globe around. And when I stopped in Europe, you know where my finger was? In Tuscany.
So this was highly technical.
Very, very
highly
very,
technical.
Yeah. Well, if it works on a globe.
Not every finger will work.
Right, that's right.
You need a green thumb, right? Yeah.
I like it.
Well,
I love that.
It worked out well for all of us, did it not?
Yes,
but this is a great, this is one of those great, how many, we've heard this American story. How many times was somebody told that will never work? And they go, okay, well, thanks for your opinion. And they push on. And that's exactly what you and your wife did.
I remember what I was going to say when we were talking before about the guy from the Department of Agriculture. He, 3 years after that date, we competed that first wine, and it won a silver medal, and really put Tehachapi on the wine map worldwide.
Yeah.
And I called the Department of Agriculture. Shame on me. and I said, "Is so-and-so available?" And he was there. The guy was there. And I called him up. You think I'm a big talker? I called him on the phone. I said, "Do you remember me?" I mean, he broke my wife's heart, and I would do anything to make his life miserable. He said, "Yes, I do." I said, "Well, you know what? Thanks to your encouragement and the incentive you gave us, we went ahead and competed it and won a silver medal, and I wanted you to be the first one to know." Damn. I don't have to throw a hitch on that. That's on the way out.
Yeah. I love that.
I do too.
And you know what? You think I'm a liar. You know what he said? In my hand to God on the phone. He said, "Told you could do it." That's what he told me.
So he's the success that actually is in his mind.
Yeah, right.
Now, this is all in the early 2000s, right? This is 2003, 2004, somewhere in there?
2003, June, planting.
Okay.
That's the day we planted. But I should emphasize the one thing I did right, I didn't finish that, is we used 1-year-old nursery-grown, what they call flowering stock, stock with leaves on it. So they grew my hybrid in their nursery, almost 5,000 plants.
Wow.
Which my wife and I dug every hole with a post hole digger. It takes 4 months to dig 5,000 holes every day, sun up to sundown. So they grew in the nursery 1 year. So when I put them in the ground, they had a much better chance of making it, and they did.
Smart move.
Amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
No, the word you're looking for is object stupidity equals luck.
Well, as I say, better be lucky than good. So, we'll take it. Yeah.
So how long after you planted your first vine did you start construction of the tasting room?
The tasting room.
That's a new facility.
That's another incredible story. The tasting room was completed July 4th, was a Friday. 2008. Anybody remember that date? Do you know what happened on that day? The Dow Jones went from 13,000 to 6,600 that day.
That would start the recession. Yep.
That day, it bottomed that day. The day we opened our business. The day we've been waiting 5 years for to bring our first sale.
Wow.
Been in business for 5 years and haven't rung a sale. Try that hat on.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and that opening day, you were probably there.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the folks in town, I mean, we had phenomenal support by the local.
Yep.
Local government's been great to us. Well, that day was a Friday. The road was yet to have been paved. It's paved now, but it was a dirt road. Doesn't lead anywhere. It cul-de-sacs out, and you turn around and come back out. So you don't pass us going anywhere. Yeah. And you didn't come from another winery in Tehachapi, that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
It was the only destination at that point.
And what happened that weekend, 2008, 4 July, we had over 1,000 people come that weekend. And we're only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 11 to 6.
Wow.
That's a big wow.
Yeah.
That shows Tehachapi support, does it not? Big deal.
And the first person in line in the street was a lady from Texas. What the hell is that? So, pretty phenomenal.
And so you had the tasting room open, and I remember going out, and you were the ultimate host. You always had a story, kind of like Cheers, maybe from the show, the sitcom Cheers, right? It's in Boston. That's where you're from. Yes. You walk in the door. I would walk in the door, Greg, and then we'd go over, and you'd start telling a story that I'd never heard before, and it was just, and the hours would just roll away.
Yeah, we stayed G-rated. And we encourage families. You know, a tasting room is not a saloon. You can bring children. You know, and a lot of younger folks from Edwards, enlisted folks, you know, come out with 2-3 kids. We always give military discount and feed them right. You know, we love those people. But the bottom line here is that we opened that door. Nobody knew how to work the register. It's just a tick under a mile. It's 9-point-something tenths of a mile from the front door of the tasting room to where the pavement starts, which is where Cummings Valley Road turns into Bailey. Okay, it's so if you're at the end and you park your car, you walk a mile, and you walk another mile to get. So we're cranking, and it was opening day and trying to figure out how to work the register. And I looked out from the bar. You can see the front window. I looked out the window, and I saw maybe 12, 15 women standing in front of the big window to the tasting room. And they're all sort of looking. I thought, that's it. Somebody's fallen already.
Stock market crash. People are falling down. Like, this thing's going up in flames.
Getting a call from Larry Parker. Okay. Yeah. So I asked one of my girls, I said, would you please go out there and see what happened? She come back in, and she's laughing like crazy. She said, you can't see those women's feet from the inside. But they're all wearing heels. and all of them said to their husbands, I ain't walking back to that car. You go get that car and come back and get me. So we set up a little thing for that.
Yeah. Now, how many people, I mean, after a little bit of success, so you got to see this, and you got to start the wine industry, but then other folks probably started maybe knocking on your door, calling you, saying, hey, I'm thinking about X in Tehachapi. So how many of those calls did you take after you had some success?
All of the ones that exist now there fit that description. But here's something I had to learn. Being in a competitive brokerage market in the L.A. area, it's, sharp pool. They're all after each other. The wine business, and this is a really hard thing to get my head around, everybody in the wine business wants the other guy to succeed.
Yeah.
That sounds almost cliche, but it's not. They do not want to see the little guy fail, to the point where they'll drop what they're doing and help you if you call them. Yeah. I called Tobin James. I talked to Tobin. There is a Tobin James. His partner's name is Lance Silver. They were so nice. I said, hey, you know what? I'm growing this wine, and I bottle this wine, and it's a Zinfandel hybrid Primitivo. But I said, you guys, he goes, no, we don't carry that. But I have a case of it. It was given to me by a salesman. Next time you're in Paso, drop in, which we did. And I'm tasting his. I went, molto bene, nice.
Yeah.
And I said, so what do you charge for? We didn't know what to charge for a bottle of wine because we didn't know what it cost us.
Yeah.
Incrementally, we didn't know. Yeah. We just made up a number, pretty lowball number at the time. But he said, "Oh no, this is $75 to $100 a bottle," and that's when we decided. My darling decided we should start competing. I have something real quick on competing. I dropped it out of the car. There it is. You know, you were talking, Greg, about folks and other growers, and they called up. I actually printed out a how-to manual.
Oh.
Printed out. If you want to know how they say, how many plants can I plant on 2/3 of an acre or something along that line? So the folks that we did help out are the ones that are here now, and there's 2 that are still phasing into where they're going to be. But you pointed something out earlier. The real sort of, for us, ingratiating moment was when I get something from the chamber or whoever it was, City Walk, or whoever they call themselves at the time, and they said, we want to do a wine walk. I said, well, I got wine. And, you know, that's where
we've poured a lot of wine over the years, haven't we, Bob?
Boy.
A lot of wine. I remember the first time I came, for a while you had celebrity wine pouring, and you invited me, and I thought, well, I'm not a celebrity, but I'll play along, right? And I was kind of just, I opened it, or maybe it was already open, and I'm just kind of pouring it gingerly. And you're like, dude, just pour the wine. You're not going to, it doesn't bruise. Just pour the wine.
I want to bring up
I'll never forget that.
I want to go back to the part you talked about competition, because I've had to have that conversation. I think there's no Tehachapi wine industry today if there's not a willingness to collaborate, because people want to make a destination. They want to be able to come to Tehachapi and go to multiple wineries. But I make that same point with the brewery folks, with this kind of growing beer industry. Hey, look, y'all got to work together, because then you create a destination and people want to come and try multiple things, and they'll find their favorites, of course. But if you work together, as we've seen in other cities that have done this, that's where the success is at. So I really appreciate the fact that was kind of your motto going in,
and still is.
Well, you set the standard, right? And so right after you, was it Chuck McCullough with Triassic? Was he the second vineyard to be planted?
He was number 2.
Yeah.
He's in his early to mid 90s.
Every once in a while, I'll see him at Triassic. I'm like, Chuck, how are you? And he's sitting there listening to the music and drinking a glass of wine. And
a geological engineer. He's a sweetheart of a man. But you know, we all get along with each other, and nobody tries to step on the other guy. And to your point, I try to tell people that say, well, what about, you know, there's an empty lot directly across the street from me next to the palace, 20 acres, and I said, the best thing that could happen to our winery would be to have somebody go in there next door, because the perfect example, the first year we were in business, Auto Club did a little feature on us, a little bitty feature, a huge response. I get a call from a guy, and he says, I need driving directions, whatever it was. I said, come, we're going to be here. He shows up with his wife, driving a Ferrari, beautiful Ferrari.
On your dirt road at the time?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I told him, I said, I improved road last month. He goes, I don't care.
Okay.
So he pulls in, and I said, so where are you from? He said, Laguna Niguel. That's a ways off. Mm-hmm. And I said, so who's with you? And it was just him and his wife. I thought it was, maybe we're going to caravan or a group or something. And I said, well, it was 11 o'clock when we opened. I said, well, what time did you leave there? And I think he said it was like 3 hours and change driving.
Yeah.
To the only one, and by the way, the first year, not only the only one that had only one wine. That ain't much of a tasting. You try that hurdle.
Yeah.
That's tough.
But you think about it, you don't go to Paso or Napa for one winery.
No.
You go for several wineries and an experience.
We could use about 10 more.
And then you have dinner and those sorts of things. Key, we talked to the gentleman that owns Discover Tehachapi in the wine tour business. And Chris and Claire Scotty.
Yeah.
And so one thing is begot another, right? It feeds on itself, and everybody wins.
Yeah. Here's another thing that the cooperation between growers and business people in the wine business. Here's the other thing. Everybody that's tried to grow wine in Tehachapi, and there's probably 8 or 9 people in that category. Maybe they haven't put the structures up yet, but they have planted and they are growing. everybody that's grown and harvested and bottled and competed, everyone without exception has won a medal. Mm-hmm. Now we compete at the world level. The San Francisco Chronicle is the Super Bowl of wine tasting. The wife, again, real quickly, said we should compete. I said, I've been dodging arrows here. What are you, crazy? One of them's going to get me, you know. She said, we should do it. I said, okay. So I called them up. I said, you get the phone number. Well, guess what? When you go on the internet, she's on the internet, and you say wine competition, you know what comes up? The World Series, the best one. Mm-hmm. And then it's down from there. Well, the best one is the San Francisco Chronicle competition is the largest competition of American-grown wine in the world. The first year, they sent me the form. This is how qualified we were to be in this competition. I didn't understand the question. I took Latin in high school. I'm Catholic.
You didn't know, you didn't know all the lingo, right? You didn't know all the wine lingo yet.
Couldn't do it. So I filled it out, and I called the lady in San Francisco. I said, I know you guys got lots of entries, and schnooks like me cause. She goes, no, I'll be happy to help you.
Nice.
Okay, this is the Moscone Center. And I said, well, here, what does this mean? What does that word mean? And what do they ask me for when they say residual sugar after bonding? What is that? Is that like a movie? Or So sure enough, my wife gets the form. We take our last $200 operating and ship it up there with cases of our wine. Now think about this. You're sending wine several hundred miles away that's going to be on somebody's warehouse dock for a period of days. Mm-hmm. And who knows what the chain of custody is, but they're really strict about it. So anyway, this is the first of 11 competitions we went into. And I get the thing back, confirmation. Congratulations, you're entered. Well, then I look and see it's 5,000 entries. Wow. At the Moscone Center. You ready for this? We can talk about odds, and I won't give you any more of the odds stories. Just odds here. In the entire competition, there was only one entry that filled this description, and this is where the AVA comes in, American Viticultural, an established growing region gets an AVA. Took us 10 years to get it, but we got it. God bless that. So this time, she says, there's only one entry in the entire competition from a non-AVA. So we're playing the Super Bowl, but we're playing in the backyard.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, that's not encouraging. And she says, and also, you're entering what's called a first crush. We entered our first harvest. That's all we had.
Yeah.
Stupid. It's monumentally stupid. You just don't bring the Packers in to play Tehachapi High School. No odds on that. She said, well, and you're the only one. So if you take the 5,000 and 5,000, that's a 10,000 a two shot. How's that for odds?
And nobody in San Francisco can pronounce Tehachapi either, so they're trying to figure out where.
Yeah, Tehachapi. Oh, Temecula? No, Tehachapi.
Yeah, right. Or Souza at the time, probably. So they're trying to figure out what the heck to call this thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the AVA, and that was something that we definitely wanted to talk about.
Big.
And then, so what? I mean, we know it's big, and I enjoy wine, but how big is it to our wine industry, to you and working on this?
From a commercial standpoint, it doesn't get any bigger. You're truly an all-star player on an all-star team, and you're recognized worldwide. There was a woman and her friend, and they were on a cruise in Tuscany, and they did a shore thing to a winery. And they're talking, and the one lady's from Bakersfield, and the other lady's from Tehachapi. They didn't know each other.
Wow.
And the lady from Bakersfield said, oh, do you know if that Souza wine is available in Tehachapi? And she goes, yeah. Well, the lady, when she got back, she couldn't wait to tell me. I said, they're dropping our name on the continent.
There you go.
It's as good as it gets.
That's super cool.
AVA.
And that goes back to you and the globe and going across your finger Tehachapi, ended up in Tuscany.
Yeah.
And here we are, people in Tuscany are talking about Tehachapi.
Who knows where it would, if I'd had my nails clipped, who knows where it would have landed? Somewhere in Yugoslavia, probably.
Yeah.
Well, what was the journey like getting the AVA starting and wanting that designation?
Absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
it requires presidential approval. Please. I hired Chuck McCullough, and I hired a consultant, very competent guy, and was just very courteous, very knowledgeable, to help us with the application. The AVA application is over 200 pages long. It fits in a 3-ring binder. When you set it on the desk, it's almost 3 inches thick. Several dollars to get it even. We did all of those things, and by mistake, the person on the other end in D.C., it goes through 42 levels of underwriting, 42 separate people. That took 3 years. I mean, give up. I'm like a pit bull, man. I mean, I don't let that kind of stuff stop me, even if it means capital offense and murder one. Or I finally got my consultant. I said, "Can you intercede? Let me see what I can find out." He came back and said, "Well, you need to have more acreage planted. There's an acreage requirement." Guess what? There isn't. He was wrong. They were wrong. The bulldog was right.
They're just making up rules as they go.
It took 10 years.
Yep.
Now what happens is an AVA is an actual representation on a map with all the boundaries, the different shapes. For example, the Tehachapi AVA stops at the Bear Valley Gate. Bear Valley doesn't allow commercial growing. That's one of the underwriting requirements.
I'm proud to say AVA, the city of Tehachapi, is included in the AVA. So if you're in the city and you grow grapes, you're in the AVA.
And by the way, what it does do for us was phenomenal. But what it does for the average guy and every real estate agent in town, your potential buyer doesn't have to be a grower, but he should know that if he does decide to grow 10 grapevines in his front yard, they're allowed to have the word grown in Tehachapi on the label.
Nice.
They can thank Souza for 10 years of screaming.
I saw that application and that study just in the sort of the last couple years of that, really trying to help push it through DC and get letters of support and that sort of thing. And there are, we're talking soil reports, weather reports, geological surveys. They want to know, it's not just they draw a line on the map and say, okay, well, this is kind of Tehachapi. They're studying because there's a change, and the soil changes here. Okay, that part's out of the AVA. It's intense, the amount of science that is thrown into this thing to make sure stuff grows.
They put meters on my ranch and in the vineyard itself, which is 60 acres altogether, and they metered rainfall, humidity, temperature, wind, average. A huge amount of stuff. But the good news is we got it and they can't take it away.
So there's been several challenges that you've overcome, right? Planting grapes, when they said you can't plant grapes, they won't grow, you can't get wine, and now the AVA. So sky's the limit.
Did you hit any challenges with other AVA areas where, I know you said Tobin James and they're out in the Paso Robles area. Right. So, but they were very friendly. Was there any?
No, but that's a good question. There are challenges if you abut next to another AVA. But if you take the satellite shot, you got Lancaster and Rosamond, and nothing touches the limits of the AVA as drawn, I suppose.
I remember that being part of the discussion when the AVA was being formed.
I think there's a theme, though. I think this story is so... it fits with Tehachapi, right? Because Greg's talking about things where overcoming challenges and it can't be done, right? Same thing goes for, this town is here because the railroad, and they said, well, you can't get a train up that mountain. There's no way. And they figured out the Tehachapi Loop to make it happen, right? And then from that, Tehachapi was born, and then these other little things here.
The wind industry was born here in the 80s.
They said, you can't generate electricity off of wind. Come on. And then they threw them up on the side of the hill and that sort of thing. So these
aviation just to the east.
Yeah, right, exactly.
My earlier question to you, kind gentleman, was, and I have a theory about this, but I know it's not correct. Why didn't somebody at least try it before? This area has a rich agricultural history.
Sure does.
My goodness. Why didn't anybody ever try it?
Pears, peaches, apples.
Everything.
Especially
lettuce.
given, we used to talk about the World War II effort. A lot of the potatoes that went into GI meals and things like that were grown in Tehachapi. And so, that's a good point. Why no one thought.
But the wine.
Maybe it was just the timing. I don't know.
I have not even a theory, just a wild guess, is that transportation then and now is quite different. Refrigeration, processing, all those things, they're all challenges. But heck, there's lots of folks doing those kinds of things, not all that far from here. The consensus that I came up against was the altitude.
Yeah.
That's baloney, because we're almost exactly the same growing altitude as Tuscany. You remember Tuscany, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the freezing, people were scared of the freeze and thought, oh, there's no way grapes will freeze.
Well,
You're just wasting your time and money.
Primitivo, that's where you got to have a little bit of luck and a little bit of knowledge. Primitivo will grow at this altitude, and because it grows at this altitude, and because there's a potential to freeze, the thickness of the skin is altered over time, over generations. And that's one of the things that gives the red wine its really rich flavor, is the thickening of the skins. Well, I mean, we've had years where we harvested on October 3rd and snowed on October 5th. You know, we get the harvest in.
Yeah.
And for a white collar schnook like me from L.A., that was, I used to turn the radio on in my car, and it was sports and weather. Now it's all weather. Yeah. Everybody's weather.
Yeah, and I've heard a few things about you talked about the grape skins. I've heard from a few other growers too. That's kind of a desirable thing. Like other wineries are requesting after you press, like, hey, I need your skins for something, right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now the thing is, you can legally add to your wine 24% of just about anything. That's an overstatement, not alcohol, obviously, but anything, any other wine, and not call it a blend. So I can have a Cabernet Sauvignon that's in a bottle, and it'll say Cabernet Sauvignon, and it'll say Tehachapi. What are we? Tehachapi Mountains.
Tehachapi Mountains.
Tehachapi
Mountain. I like that. And you can do that without disclosing it. Once you go over 25%, you've got to disclose it as a blend or an additive, like the skin you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You just have to disclose it, and you have to disclose what percentage.
Interesting. When did you decide to grow something different other than the Primitivo? Like, when was it, okay, let's try making another cab, whatever it was?
I tried really desperately and succeeded with all the folks who came to us for growing advice to grow something other than the Primitivo. You know, that makes us a bigger draw totally, and it makes us more exclusive on the. But here's 8 years of competing and 8 years of medals.
Something to be very proud of.
I am. When the lady that helped me with the application in San Francisco the first year got a silver medal that year. That's the 1 in 10,000 shots, or 2 in 10,000 shots. Yeah. She called me on the phone. I hate to admit this, actually, but I'm going to. She called me on the phone and said, Mr. Souza, I'm calling you with some information. Protocol is when you enter and win, you're notified by certified mail. And we are not allowed to discuss that until you have gotten and blah, blah, blah. She goes, this is before I knew we won anything. She said, but I want you to know.
She was so excited.
She was, and she said, we know what the odds on this were. And she's the one that gave me those numbers. Yeah. And I lost it on the phone. I believe that shit.
Yeah, that's crazy. What a great story.
Patty comes running in from the other room. She goes, did you drop something on your foot? My macho maybe, but yeah.
Now, besides hearing no from the wine experts that you can't do that here in Tehachapi, what other challenges? I'm betting there was a boatload of challenges that came along the way, being the first one to do it here. And you know, like you said, you're the pit bull. You know, you take a bite and you're not letting go. What other things come to mind that was a little bit challenging?
I tell my sons, especially when you know that has his very successful business. I tell them my hero is the cartoon character, the Roadrunner, who's constantly being pursued by the coyote, and inevitably he leads him off a cliff. And he keeps running. He keeps running about halfway until when?
He looks down.
He looks down.
Yep.
And I tell my sons, never look down. Just keep running. Don't look down. And that's every time one of them challenges came. But the first challenge we got was a processor. Who's going to squish our grapes to make them into wine? For me, fee-based. Well, you're too small. We don't crush anybody that little.
Yeah, we don't have time for that. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to clean the pipes and do all this and that.
Wait, I thought you crushed it with your feet. No,
I almost had to. funny you should mention that. So we did. That was one of the first ones, and we ran into the same problem with the label maker. They want 10,000 lots or more, and So yeah, I think there probably delivery. There probably wasn't a. You know who helped us a lot? He's not here anymore. Was the fellow that was the manager of Albertsons, Don. Something his name was. Terrific guy.
I remember that guy. What was his last name?
It'll come to me.
Yeah, me too.
And so anyway, I went and talked to him. I said, how's things going? He goes, Bob, I just came back from a vacation with their wife in Paso Robles, and the market up there, he goes to the wine section right away anytime he goes through a market, because he was thinking about this. And he said, they have an aisle designated to only locally grown Paso Robles wine in that aisle. And then they have the Gallo and the rest of those guys. And he said, and I want to do that with you. So I said, God, talk to me. We've been dropping 3 and 4 cases at the little restaurants in town. And I think he says, can you have 50 cases here tomorrow? I'm my own delivery guy, by the way, and I'm in a pickup truck, so 50 cases is a piece of work. Yeah. And I talked to his liquor manager, I guess you'd call him, the guy that manages that part of the store. And they were good-heartedly arguing over who was going to do the display. And Don said, don't you touch that. I'm going to build that display for Christmas. And he put that big display up with the little red poinsettias or something.
As soon as you walk in. I remember when I walked in, I saw the display, and I called you, and I'm like, Bob, your wine's at Albertsons. You're like, of course, I know it is, Greg.
I delivered
I'm
it,
like,
Greg.
oh, my God, your wine is at Albertsons.
Well, the other thing that was hard to do is to sell our new wine. So you're talking about our challenges. This is really a big one. We had the license to produce, to bottle, to ship, to do all these things, but we didn't have the license to pour until we finished building the tasting room. Yep. So we couldn't pour the wine that I'm trying to talk you into buying.
Could you sell it to us so that we could pour it ourselves, though? No, couldn't do that either.
No, and you bring up an interesting point, and this I've learned this more and more through both the microbrew industry and the wine industry. There are so many permits and licenses required to do what you do. I mean, were you kind of overwhelmed? Like, wait, I need a permit for what?
I mean, the funny thing is, the only license we weren't required to have was city, because we're outside the city limit. I said, well, I got some juice there. They like me.
No, it's amazing how many. I mean,
and the federal part is very excruciating.
Yeah,
really drawn out. Nothing happens in good time.
No,
costs you a lot of money. But that's the nature of the business.
So were you delivering in the vintage stick shift truck that said Souza Family Vineyards on the side, a door? That's a hallmark moment right there.
Yeah, right.
You know, you can throw this back. This is real. This is Americana. I love it.
Claudia from the Loop, she was heading up our Leeds Club. We used to meet for breakfast, and I was promoting the winery. And what did she come up with? She came up with something that was really clever. She was extremely helpful. Oh, I know what it was. She said, would you write a column for the newspaper? Another thing I'm totally unqualified to do. I said, sure. What do you want me to do? Just write about the wine. I actually wound up writing 100 columns.
I was going to say, that turned into about 99 more.
And she, Claudia, the point I was trying to make earlier, she decided to call it Bob the Wine Guy. And boy, did that stick.
Well, it was perfect.
And do you remember Dr. Brady, the chiropractor? Yeah. Terry, good guy. Remember Terry? And Jamie, that owns Prime Sign. The three of us would sit together at the breakfast. Me, Terry, and Jamie. And the way it worked was you'd introduce yourself around and what you did and share leads, right? So she called me Bob the Wine Guy. So I said, good morning, everybody. I'm Bob the Wine Guy. And Terry just says, I'm Terry the Spine Guy. Jamie, who owned Prime Sign, says, I'm Jamie the Sign Guy. We killed him. The Kelseys.
You know, when we were talking about, the show, we've got to talk about the wine industry, and Greg says, we've got to have Bob the Wine Guy. I mean, that's exactly how he referred. He remembered right back to those articles that you were writing, being known as the Wine Guy.
You know, it's really funny. I put a thing out there and said, contact me on email with your questions. Some of the stuff I couldn't get into, But for the most part, it was, when you go to a high-class joint with your honey and the wine guy pops the cork and hands it to you, what the hell are you supposed to do with it? And the answer isn't make a fish bobber out of it. That is not the right answer, although I had a number of people put that in there. You're supposed to match the printing on the cork to the printing on the label, because it's very easy to counterfeit a bottle of wine by simply
generic cork. Yeah.
And if you don't, and there's all manner of tricks. I had a guy tell me that, where the hell were they? They were in France or someplace, and the wine steward had corks in his pocket, probably to overcome the generic. We don't know that, but anyway, those are the kind of questions they.
I'm a screw cap wine guy anyway, so it doesn't matter.
By the way,
which is now a thing, actually.
Not only is it a thing, but we're talking $85 to $100 bottle thing.
Right.
Wow,
it's far more effective.
Right, I've heard that.
Just misses all the.
It used to be a joke, right? Screw cap wine, and but now it's actually growers and producers are like, no, this is a lot better.
And Portugal, I'm half Portuguese, is the world's leading exporter of cork. Major shortage of cork, so they can't get and good cork can. That's another hurdle we had, was getting our cork supplier willing to put an imprint, branded, they call it, imprint on the cork for us. Without ordering 20,000 more than I needed, but I did it anyway.
Wow.
Corks, yeah. That was a pretty famous. How many of those I got was there? But anyway, I enjoyed that column thing a lot. That was a lot of fun.
So when you open up, you get to the point where you've opened the tasting room. And how does that change for you? Now you've got people coming in, you're able to pour.
Yes.
And then what are those experiences like? I bet you that just the fact that the business has evolved. It's taken, 5 years, 6 years, or are we longer than that?
Well, it's 03. No, I'm sorry, 08. So it's a pretty long time. Yeah, the thing is, we adopted a family atmosphere. Not a slap and tickle joint like some of the other places. So some of the mini breweries can have a certain clique. Mm-hmm. Nothing against that. We serve them all. But I can remember the day we opened, I took the cashier's receipt. I've since lost it, because that was our first ring of our business in 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. Try being in business for 6 years and never ringing a dime. That's tough.
It takes a ton of faith, is what it takes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say Cliff Meredith at Stray Leaves.
Yeah.
He's doing the same thing right now with his tasting room downtown. It's taken him several years. That's kind of a one-man show. He's doing a lot of work himself, but he's cash flowing that whole endeavor. So I talked to him just today, as a matter of fact, just bumped into him on Green Street, and he invited me in. And he hopes to be open this summer with his tasting room downtown. So that'll be exciting.
We're all pulling for
Yet another example of...
You know who we're talking about?
Oh, yeah, I was with Greg today when we walked in, and we looked at his furniture.
He was a battalion chief.
Mm-hmm. Kern County Fire, right?
Yeah. Good guy.
Yep. Yet another example of awesome...
He's helped us on a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. And like you don't have enough to do, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I think with Jim Arnold was saying from Triassic, but 2 years ago, I don't know, last year, somebody's crop came in short, and so they ended up giving grape to them, so they could make wine and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was that still exists.
We had two folks that fit that category that needed. We supplied them both.
Yeah,
and then Mike and Michelle Dorner, they've created not just a vineyard and tasting room, but they have a wedding venue too,
which is phenomenal.
So it's fabulous. The setting is just is stunning.
And that one took a little while too. I mean, they were just the financing and building and the permits. It took several years to build that up. And then of course they get it open, and then COVID hits, and then they've got to sort of pivot a little bit, but they did it, and it's an amazing venue.
Let's see if I remember my notes. Get Mike. Yeah.
Right now, Bob is one of our few guests that's come in prepped
with notes.
So he took notes on, I think, the most commonly asked questions.
Yeah.
And what is the most commonly asked question for you that you've had over the years?
Well, I think it's something that's propelled by the fact that people assume I have all this background in education. That's funny. We get really good-hearted people. We got a sign up that says, "When you're here, your family." Yeah. They come and ask us, "Where's my hug?" That sort of thing. That atmosphere. But there's 1%. It's usually a single male in his early 30s. And he came in with his entourage, which was probably 10 people. So we were happy to see a big load come in. And we get bus loads and stuff and all that. So he comes in, and this is the pseudo-expert guy, but he's mean-spirited. Mm-hmm. And he came up to the thing, and I could see that he's playing to his group, not to me, when he's asking the question to me. And it was a very technical question regarding processing and handling, like a chemistry 12 question. And I figured out right away, I didn't know the answer, by the way. I figured out right away, this guy's trouble, you know. So I looked at him, I said, you know, you seem like have a lot of experience. In your experience, did that scenario ever come up for you? He goes, yes, it did. I said, well, what did you do? And he gives me this rambling explanation, which neither myself or the people he's playing to understood. And I said, well, by God, that's exactly what we did. And he was happier than shit.
That works too.
But in the main, you know, people when they come into our joint, they're in a good mood and they leave in a better mood.
Yeah.
Patty, we work at separate corners. She's at the register and I'm at the bar. And I'll be telling one of my favorite jokes and they laugh. And Patty would come over later and say, boy, you were killing them over there. They were laughing so hard. I said, honey, you give anybody 3 drinks and the punchline's great. there's no worries. And that was the truth. There was we worked out a deal with Stallion Springs timeshare. Mm-hmm. And people would come to the timeshare, and on Sundays they would bring over a busload of just that group. And there was a man and his wife who were from Michigan, and they're talking, and I said, I got a joke for you, and I give him the joke. It's a clean joke. Police joke, by the way. You should give it to you. And I get a big laugh, and Kim Nash, you know Kim Nash?
Oh, right, yeah.
Keith. Mm-hmm. So Kim, she's my little bulldog. She's behind me. They're in front of me. I'm in between. And so the guy leans over to Kim, and he goes, I bet you hear Bob's jokes a lot. And she goes, oh, yeah, he does tend to be repetitive. And the guy says, I know. We were here last year on our vacation, and he told us the same joke. But
it was funny then, and it's funny now.
It's all in how you deliver it.
So was it 2018? You guys said, all right, it's going to, you decided to sell what was then Souza to the folks that now operate Tehachapi Wine and Cattle. What was that decision like?
Them. You know, the perfect suspects. They're 25 years younger than Patty and I. Mm-hmm. She never lets me tell anybody my age because she's quite a bit younger than me, by the way. But she just you can't do that. Okay. I listen to her. Yeah. Well, she prepares my pills. She could whack me. So Mike and Beth came by to take a look at the place, and they went through a similar experience than we did, and they literally snapped, culturally, everything. And Mike's turned into a full-on cowboy, and they're really good people, and they're doing all the right stuff. They're doing all the improvements. What happened, people ask me, do you miss it? And I said, I really miss the warmth of the people. I really miss that part. And I miss the part where we were contributing. He was talking about being celebrity bartender for charity. We did a couple of them for not Wounded Warriors, the other one. Honor Flight. And our goal for that was to get enough funding. We had prizes, all that stuff, and most of the day's take, and to send 3 veterans, it's really something else. Yeah. And so we put a big hard press on it, and at the end of the day, is his name Jim and Pam, I think it is, the couple that worked for the Veterans Association. And he came up to me and he goes, do you know how we did? I said, no, ask Patty. We did enough to send 9.
9 veterans to DC.
And this is another moment for me. One of the little gals, she used to work at the beer place, the mini brewery by the hardware store. Mm-hmm.
LCB? The one over behind Southern California Edison.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. And anyways, so she's a school teacher. She's one of my baristas, but sweet gal, got married, has a kid now. And she said, I teach 5th grade, and I have an idea. I'm going to tell my class that they have to write a letter or a card to a veteran. So she had her whole 5th grade class do that.
That's awesome. Underscored the whole thing, didn't it?
Oh.
Well, I've known Mike and Beth for many years, even before they entered into the scene, the Tehachapi wine and cattle scene, and they're good people, and they're doing a good job out there.
Oh, so. I couldn't be happier. And some people ask me, do you miss it? Of course I do. I'm proud of where we took it to, but this year it's second at the end. That's for darn sure.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing is that the physical demands, we could have staffed up and been gone a lot. We didn't do that because it'd be like walking out on your family kind of thing. We didn't do that. And they can do that. They're structured. They have no kids, So
keep their fingers in the soil.
And they've done just a phenomenal job of the things that were on my fix-it list.
Awesome.
When you sit back now, I mean, you look back to early 2000s, even a little bit before that, and then you see what is there now, not just with Tehachapi Wine and Cattle, but the entire AVA, the 6 wineries, places like Discover Tehachapi, Old Vineyard Charm, folks that are doing these wine tours. How does that make you feel to sit back and go, this was just somebody who kind of had this crazy idea and some dumb luck, and then to see what it's turned into now? What are your feelings when you look at that now?
That's a good question. There was a period of time right after we retired that I had this kind of wave of, not really depression, but a sense of, what's the word?
It'd be anxiety. Did I do the right thing?
It was relative. Can you relate to the present? I've never thought about endgame. Diagnosed terminal twice. One of them was 20 years ago, so I know where that guy is. So I don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I think I'm at the age and with the time in service part where as a guy, I don't know if it's where women do this or not, but as a guy, I think you have to say what's my legacy going to be. And at first, I was going to press you for the bronze statue in City Park, holding grapes. I realize that might be pushy. So
well, maybe we.
I've already augmented that.
Oh, okay.
Ready? I'm going to settle for a bobblehead.
A bobblehead.
There you go.
Bob the Wine Guy bobblehead.
Well, I'd like that idea, but I think maybe a mural. Wouldn't that be cool? A mural downtown with you and Patty and the different wineries. That would be kind of cool.
Sitting in that old truck, it'd be perfect. That'd be great. Yeah, we can make that happen.
Do you still have the truck, or did you leave it with the winery?
The funny part about that truck is a very, very dear friend of mine's son belonged to his son, and he was actually in prison. And I bought the truck knowing my wife could never drive it because it was a stick, as a favor to that guy. And then when he got out of prison, he got the truck back.
He wanted it back.
Wow.
You did the right thing again.
So let me get this straight. So the entire Tehachapi wine industry was founded by 2 people who had no idea what they were doing, and they using a truck that was purchased from an inmate.
Pretty much.
All right, there you go. There's your Reader's Digest version.
Sums it up. But it was so successful. So proud. So proud.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll have some form of legacy that we actually deserve. Usually it's too much the other way, but at some point in time when you get to a certain age, my age, when you get to a certain age, you say, what's going to be my legacy? We've successfully raised 6 kids, 13 grandkids, and 4 great-grandkids. Got that job done. Everybody's cool. No drugs, no jail, no nothing. I can't, in today's world, God bless. I'm probably the luckiest guy you're ever going to talk to.
And you live in the city of Tehachapi now. So excited. Makes me proud. One of the things when we first got here that I wanted to do was to develop some sort of connection and not be the ugly American. I didn't want to bring LA up here, and enough LA. I want to bring something. And I think we respectfully were able to do that. And I think the AVA is the punctuation on that. I hope that's true. At least it's my personal feeling. It is true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah. It's definitely that AVA is the exclamation point.
Huge.
At the end of it.
Huge.
I'm excited. This was a great call, Greg, to bring in the wine guy.
Every Tehachapi podcast is different, but this one's been special. That's for sure. Very special.
Yeah, Bob, thank you for sharing the history of what is now an industry, which we couldn't have said that, 2 decades ago.
Let me give you one little story that to me said Tehachapi, and it's why I love this town. I always wanted to bring something in, not take something out. As I said, we moved here in July of '90. I get a thing in the newspaper that says Mountain Festival. Name the festival. And we're driving around town. Patty said, "What do you think?" Because we all different. I said, "Well, it reminds me, having grown up in Boston, I've been surrounded by old history my whole life." And they said, "It reminds me of small town America." Mm-hmm. It did have one street light. And so she goes, "That's it, put that in there." So I put a taste of small town America. And wouldn't you know, the damn thing wins. Now, I'm living here not 4 months and know absolutely nobody. The only person I knew by name was a real estate agent who sold me the ranch. And when the day escrow closed, he sold me his horse and moved to Wisconsin. Straight up. And he was the only guy I knew. So I'm going like, what am I going to do? So I get a call. This is, it must have been Chamber of Commerce probably, whoever was freight coordinator knows.
Yeah, Chamber
of Commerce. And we just want you to know that you won $150, and we'd like you to ride in the parade as Grand Marshal for naming the theme. I told my wife, I said, "We're going to ride in the parade." Okay, you ready for that?
Put that horse to good use.
So I don't know anybody. So I get to there. They got a old, looked like a little Fiat convertible. They had us sitting in the back and doing this stuff. Serious. We're coming down the main street where Stray Leaves is.
Yeah,
now.
F and green. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's ironic when I think about it. Yeah. And there's 3 teenage boys sitting on the curb. Big crowd in those days. And they're screaming, "Bob, Bob, Bob." And I turned to my wife and I said, "We're here 3 months. I have no idea who those guys are, and they already know who we are." She goes, "You idiot, your name's on the door." Bob and Patty Souza. Came right back down to reality.
That's part of the reason that you were so successful. These stories. When I did a little research and looked at some Yelp reviews of the Souza Family Vineyards during your tenure, and that's what people talked about, was the experience, the approachability, the stories, how you engage them. And these aren't people that said so-and-so from Tehachapi. They were from Texas. They were from South Carolina. They were from all over the United States that experienced Souza Family Vineyards, and they experienced Bob and Patty Souza.
You can be brutally honest on Yelp, and they were. And Tehachapi is a better place because of Bob and Patty Souza.
Oh, that's not good to hear that.
Pressure's on, right? No, I mean that. It's a better place because of the two of you.
Thank you.
Well, Bob, anything else that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to share?
I really want to tell you my cop joke.
I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Is it clean?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm ready for it.
So it was given to me by a customer when I turned. I'm 82. I got a birthday in 3 weeks, or May something, and it was when I turned 70, and I was really depressed because you got the big number in front for 9 years. Okay. So anyway, this 70-year-old guy buys himself a Corvette. He jumps in the car. That was his bucket list item. His birthday. Jumps in the car, gets up on the 58 going toward Mojave. And of course, first time he's driven it, he wants to, gun it up, which he does. So he's flying along well over the speed limit, 100 miles an hour. Looks in the rearview mirror, and sure enough, light him up. Lights come on, pulls him over. Big, tall highway patrol officer. Gets out of his car, walks back, knocks on the window. Bob rolls the window. "Yes, sir." He goes, "Do you know how fast you were going?" He goes, "Well, I know it's fast." "Why do you ask?" He said, "Well, you were doing over 100. I could cuff you and bring you in. I should." He goes, "Wait a minute." Bob said, "Wait a minute. This is my birthday. This is my first time driving this car. I know it was stupid. I'm old enough to know that. You don't have to tell me that. So the officer takes back. He says, "I'll tell you what. I'm going to let you off with a warning, but you have to give me a really good story." And Bob says, "I'll tell you the truth. First time I drove this car, I gunned it up to 100. I looked in the rearview mirror, and I saw them lights come on. When I saw them lights come on, I missed a big part of the punchline. My wife divorced me 25 years ago for a highway patrolman. And when I saw those lights come on and you pulled me over, I thought you were bringing her back." I really missed that joke.
No, it was still perfect. It was still perfect.
Awesome.
That is the charm of what Souza Family Vineyards brought to Tehachapi, the creation of our wine industry. And Bob, I thank you so much for taking the time to come in. And we had to work around some schedules to make this happen, but all three of us said, no, we have to be there. So all of our calendars had to be in sync because we wanted to get a chance to hear some of these stories.
Perfect.
Guys, anything this is like
Can't top that show and that joke. I mean, I'm out.
I think that joke will be repeated.
Yes, it will.
That was the joke that the guy from Michigan. No, it was the one with. I was one of four boys, and my older brother was a year older than me. Then my younger brother was a year younger than me, and I always wanted to hang out with my older brother, but he would never let me hang out with him and his buddies. But he would use me as a stalking horse. I was the guy to try out stuff to get caught he wouldn't do. So I said, "Well, so what is your plan, big brother?" And he says, "Well, our folks and their friends treat us like we're babies still, and we're not. And I think I know why. Dad cusses all the time, and they listen to him. Starting tomorrow, you and I are going to cuss, and you wait and see. They're going to treat us different. And I'm going to say hell, and you're going to say ass." That's the worst words of the joke. And little brother says, "Okay." So the next morning, the two of them are sitting at the kitchen table. Mom comes down, and she goes over to the older brother, and she says, "What would you like for breakfast, sweetheart?" He goes, "What the hell? I'll have Cheerios." Bam! She slaps him across the mouth, grabs him by the ear, drags him down the hall, throws him in his room, grounded for a week. She goes back out to see the younger brother, me. And he goes, "Okay, potty mouth, what are you going to have?" He said, "You can bet your ass it won't be Cheerios."
We've had a lot of fun with this, but at the end of the day, this is economic development in Tehachapi. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much money has been brought into this community from your vision.
A buck.
Not
every
just,
gas station, every hotel.
Yeah, it's not just the wineries. It's all of the other businesses that have benefited. And I really want to impress on people, tourism and wineries and microbreweries and parades, and those things bring people to our city, and they spend money.
By the way, they bring the right kind of consumer. Take it from me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The ones you don't think are going to spend money, drop $200-300 on a little visit. Okay.
That's right. Thank you, Bob.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
Bob, the wine guy, Souza. This was a special show. We appreciate your time, Bob. And folks, for those of you that are listening, this is a little taste of our wine culture and industry. And Bob is the founder, but I think some of these other wineries have tried to follow suit, and they're telling stories, and they're being accessible in the ownership. And you get to actually meet the people with the names that match the name above the door. And I think that's the charm of coming to Tehachapi. That's one of the beautiful things about, we still are a small town. As we grow, those are some of the things that I just appreciate. So if you've got a thought, a question, or a show idea for us, you can email media@tehachapicityhall.com. It's that easy. And maybe the next time someone wants to hear something, that we're going to want to hear from Patty, because it was actually her idea. I don't know. We appreciate the time here on Tehachapi.
Perspective.
Yeah. And please tell Patty thank you for that idea, and thank you for her patience.
She's been doctoring me up for the last few days to keep me vertical.
This is Tehachapi. We appreciate the time, and we'll catch you again soon.
Tehachapi is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@tehachapicityhall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of Tehachapi.